Hi, friends. It's Eric here, talking with famous people. And tonight, I'm talking about touchers, the invisible minority. So I watched this TED Talk YouTube video today. Somebody linked to it. Maybe I think in the live stream yesterday, maybe even. I don't know where I got the link from exactly, and it's called Looker, Listener, Toucher, or something like that. Anyhow, if you're like me, maybe like most people, I don't know, you perhaps think of information processing as being broken down between visual and auditory. I always have. That's basically the two kinds of data you can store in your memories, visual or auditory. Well, I don't know about the science behind this, but this woman explains that there are three kinds of information processing that are possible. 5% of the population are touchers. So the principle behind this is 70% of the population is lookers. They mostly process visual information. They like eye contact. They expect eye contact. And it makes sense that 70% of the population would be lookers because as far as the most useful data we have, sort of organically, we are visual creatures first and foremost, in the sense that most of what I have to do to survive as a creature in the world it's predicated on my being able to see more than anything else, more than being able to hear or taste or smell or anything like that. But 25% of the population are listeners. I'm a listener. And it's interesting the physical correlations this video talked about, and it's really a video about body language. But the thing is, the correlations between body language so lookers stand up more straight. They are less fidgety. They look a lot. And they apparently use a lot of visual language, according to this too. I'm not sure about the language part of it because I use all of those manners of language all the time. And listeners, naturally, it seems like will. But listeners, on the other hand, are more sloppily dressed. They don't care about how they look. And they're like pin clickers. And, they're like, NTPs and shit. Intuitive, basically, are probably more often listeners. But the invisible minority here, the 5% of the population that are touchers, there is apparently a third modality by which information is understood and stored. Of course, there's a prioritization implicit in it as well. If you're storing mostly visual information, you're prioritizing mostly visual information. If you're storing mostly auditory information, you're prioritizing mostly auditory information, which is to say, mostly language. And if you're prioritizing touch information, if you're storing mostly touch information, you're prioritizing touch information. Now, I have a hard time conceiving what it would be like to store information that is touch related rather than look or hear. The lady in that video indicated that the touch information is not just about physical sensations, but about emotional feelings as well. And I think this links into what Becky was saying some time back about impressions. That and I think the reason it didn't really settle into something meaningful for me prior to this moment is she was trying to link it specifically to SI versus, say, SI higher versus SI lower, and I didn't. The distinction wasn't exactly clear to me. Now it's clear to me. If we imagine, and I don't know if this is how it is, but let's imagine that look, listen, and touch are like a tritype, like a Negron, that one's your dominant, one's your middle one, and one's your one you rarely ever use. Which it seems, because the lady also said, well, we all use all three, but we prioritize, So it makes sense that it would be like that. When I evaluate myself, I see that I'm clearly a listener first by a large margin. So most of my informational attention is directed towards auditory information, particularly language. And I am a looker second. That is to say, I do have very weak image retention and stuff. She asked everybody in the audience that thing to try to remember events. And see how you remember. Do you remember in pictures? Do you remember in what's said? Do you remember how you felt? Well, when I tried that exercise, I mostly encountered a bunch of sort of proto images that kind of represented packages of information about a given memory. So it would seem that my memory style uses look to or visual information to sort of tag out memories because it's well suited for that, whereas the actual content of the memory may include a lot more language. High power Red Bull. Yeah, I don't know why. It's just a very slow accruing people live stream. Not sure why, but sometimes that just happens. Anyway, so I'm definitely a listener first, definitely a looker second, and I have trouble even conceiving of what it would be like to do the feeling part of it. Except I realized something as I was sitting here the other day. I had a distinct feeling where I was sort of imagining a hypothetical, where I had, imagine myself in a situation where I had done something bad and was encountering consequences, and I felt my heart drop into my stomach like it was actually real as just hypothetical. And it's kind of the first moment when I realized, oh, this matter, it's not directly involving me, is kind of important to me anyway, or has some impact on my feelings. And I can remember that feeling. I've told the story a couple of times. It's like, of course, it gets converted pretty much to language after a couple of tellings. I don't really remember I can still remember the feeling. And what I mean by remember it is I can still kind of manufacture the echo of it in my chest, which is an odd thing to note. Hi, it's Freddie Chandran. How you doing? But anyway, the big takeaway from all of this for me is that the problem with Kimberly and Kimberly and me and our communication is what I'm constantly have been screaming at her for a long time now. Listen to me. Why won't you listen to me? Because she's one of those 5% of the people who are the toucher. She's touch first and she's look second. She can listen about as well as I can remember my feelings. And I've been trying to impose this, like my modality, auditory information, because it's not something I really put a lot of weight into thinking about before. It's like, well, I get that she's a feeler and that she's, I guess to the extent that I never really thought about how she stored information though. Like she probably more image based and then when Becky started talking about the impressions, it still didn't click in because I didn't have a frame in which to understand it. But this toucher thing is incredibly revealing to me because Kimberly clearly does remember how she felt and the impression she takes away emotionally and physically and stuff from things that happen rather than taking away from it what she heard words wise. ISFJs are excellent listeners, and I will note this thing as well that Kimberly is always picking up every little visual signal I might give and facial expression and stuff like that. She can tell if I'm brooding on something and even what I'm probably brooding on. She's got a very nuanced ability to read me, but it's not her primary way of understanding. And so when things get volatile between us, most of the information she takes away is the emotional information, and almost none of it is the language information. And it really doesn't have anything to do with all the things that I've misread herring so far. Like, is it my tone? It's not that. It's not tone because it's energy level, and it's different. Tone is a factor, of course, but tone is a listening thing. And it explains why I've had so much trouble even when I change my tone. Because her number one thing is she's processing the informational data of the energy, which I can't even say is a real thing, really. It's like not something you can define or anything. Kankan Krishna Sarma Pagu and Swarty Chandran are here. And Power Red Bull is here as well. I appreciate it. I'm happy to see them. Well, Kankan Krishna Sarma Pagu missed Swarty Chandran, but is not a perv. So, in case you were thinking that Kankan Krishna Sarma Pagu is a perv, you can just check that thought right out of the line. Usually your polar F5 makes it hard for you to tap into the emotional motivation behind your words, which makes it hard to regulate your tone. Tap into the emotional motivation behind my words. Well, only not that long ago, within the last year or so, learned this thing where I have parts. And so when I began to understand things that cause reactivity in me as parts that are trying to say something, it becomes much clearer to me how to access F5. And I was able to go, okay, well, what's actually motivating this thing I'm going to say? Yes, I can defend it. Of course, I've sculpted something that is beyond reproach technically. Like I'm going to say this set of words, and whatever you might normally think is a way to counter that, this thing I've constructed here is not susceptible to that because I picked my words very carefully, right? So the question then I have to ask myself is, yeah, Eric, but why do you want to say this? Is it because you're resentful, or is it because you're actually trying to communicate in an affirming way? Because of course it's possible to communicate effectively in ways that are scathing, and that's not necessarily the wrong or bad thing to do in certain circumstances, but it's absolutely the wrong or bad thing to do in a romantic relationship, because ultimately criticism kills love. And what everybody really wants from their romantic partner is not to be corrected. It's not to go through a series of back and forth parsing things where you take turns going, I'm right, you're right, I'm wrong, or whatever. It's to be protected and indulged. It's like if my ideal partner, if I'm Kimberly, my ideal partner will say, Kimberly doesn't use words well. She's not remembering or processing much listening information from me. In other words, the words I'm saying, but she's processing my energy and stuff. And regardless, I know that she does that to the extent that she's saying things that can objectively be condemned. She doesn't mean them. And what she really wants a partner to do is to say, I want you to be heard in a way that makes you both feel heard. I want to help you be heard such that your words are more effective at making you heard. And I'm going to ignore shit that I might not think is acceptable from other people because I love you the way you are, even though our communication styles cause some difficulties sometimes. So the thing is, touchers are only 5% of the population according to this video. And of course, Kimberly and Becky's sister actually were put in like special programs for language processing problems and stuff as a kid. There's nothing retarded at all about Kimberly. I mean, she's not special ed at all, but it shows you the normative quality, the quality of normative violence, in a sense, that is done by the school system. What does school tell everybody who walks in? It tells them what's wrong with them against the metric of how comfortable they naturally fit into school. The other thing that makes clear to me, Freddie Chan, about the touchers is it's not surprising then that Kimberly has a very difficult time expressing what it is she's looking for. What outcome would you like from this conversation, Kimberly? The answer is always the same thing. She wants it to feel right. She wants the conversation to feel right. But she's never said that to me because society hasn't ever allowed that to be a possible thing, right? It's like we've got audio and visual data. We don't have touch data. That's not how people process information, except 5% of people do. And so the English language isn't as conducive to expressing touch data as it is to expressing listening data. Most of all, it's very easy to convey because that's what language is all about. It's also not as good at conveying as it is at conveying look data. We have lots of language to describe things visually. We've got lots of language to take advantage of the auditory nature of speaking, and we've got music and lots of data on lots of levels. We've got meaning, we've got tone, we've got blah, 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 blah. All that stuff that you can basically name as data that we understand as data is either going to be visual or audio. And when you say, well, what's the data that's touch then? Well, it's impressions, as Becky says. That's what the word means. It means touch data. Eric, I have to say something though. I learned a lot from some of the Cuban ways, almost behaving like you in mannerisms. In one of my interviews, one of the panelists actually asked me whether I do professional debates. Huh. I mean, is this interview on your YouTube channel? Do you have a YouTube channel or something, or what? I don't know. What happens if I click your name or something? Let's see. How do I just click you to see where your YouTube channel is? I guess you can't do that in this, huh? I don't know. Well, that's cool, Can Krishna Summer Vagu. I appreciate you telling me that. It's great to think that people take things that, there's little pieces of my words or ideas and stuff that people utilize all over the place. I mean, obviously, I'm full of other people's ideas and words and stuff too, but it's really gratifying to know that because of this YouTube channel, I get a little bit wider spread. I like that a lot for some reason. It seems to matter a lot to me that it's like that's the any impact, the any equivalent of SE impacting in the world. Okay, so yeah, touchers. It makes so much sense that one of the big issues for Kim and I would be that if she's not processing the kind of data that and the funny thing, the other thing the lady said in there is everybody assumes they process their own kind of data. Then everybody processes the same way that they process. So if I'm a listener first, when I'm frustrated, I'm going to be telling people, will you listen to me? If I'm a looker first, I'm going to be saying things like, look, big picture here, I don't give a fuck, or whatever, I guess, using visual language. Hi, Kimmy.
Hi.
And if I'm a toucher, like Kimberly, and I'm only 5% of the population, then I've not even been given a set of words to convey information with that kind of data. And if my significant other, for some reason, happens to go listen, look, touch, and Kim goes touch, look, listen, then we're beating our heads against the wall because we're not aware of the fact that there's this, or I'm not aware of the fact that there's this third kind of data, and so it doesn't make any sense to me why she wouldn't, quote unquote, listen to me. Well, now it does make sense. You heard about the toucher, Susie?
What toucher?
So I watched this video, a TED Talk today, and it says that there are 3 kinds of people in the world. 70% of the people are visual data, 25% are auditory data, and 5% are touch data.
Okay.
Here's what I've concluded, and I've been thought about something. Kimberly's data processing stack, so to speak, goes touch, look, listen. Mine goes listen, look, touch. And so, what am I always screaming at you, Kimberly?
Listen to me.
Listen to me, for God's sake. Why won't you listen to me? Well, that's just not a form of data that she processes meaningfully. Just as if she would say, feel what you felt 2 days ago, Eric. Feel it now. I'd be like, feel your feelings now.
Just feel more, Eric.
I don't even know what the fuck you're telling me.
Feel more.
I've been doing the equivalent to Kimberly, but I just learned about this today. Somebody put this link up like the live stream yesterday. It totally makes all kinds of constipation knocked loose. You heard about the touchers, Spacey? Touchers, a third kind of data that's stored and processed, prioritized, not just auditory, not just visual, but toucher data.
Okay.
That's blind people.
Well, you know why probably Helen Keller was able to do such amazing things? She just happened to be lucky to be a blind and deaf person who was a toucher first.
Is that eggs?
Feel free to come in and sit down, touchers.
Oh, you're touchers.
Thank you, Abraham.
It's touch time.
So, I'm pretty sure Kimberly's a toucher. Now, the other thing it said is that touchers are those people who always go like, they put their hands on your arm and stuff and like want to hug you when they first meet you and stuff like that.
I don't do that.
I know. But I think that's where I was going with that. I don't think that's a very good indicator because Kimberly's FE is going to control that more than anything else. And she is very visual as well.
I do touch the people that I like moist tenders for.
Mm-hmm.
Only though. Like I'm always touching Spacey.
Mm-hmm. Well, maybe Ron Morgan is because it's not your preferred data type. I'm providing a lot of touch data right now. Yes, that's my hand between your legs. I'm touching you. Otherwise, you won't know because you're a touch data person. Okay, Emma, I'm touching you right now. I'm kind of caressing the back of your neck gently. Just for everyone's reference, it's non-alcoholic beer. It's quite good, though. Really quite good. Okay, I mean, this isn't going to be a super long live stream. I got maybe 10 or 15 more minutes of it in me, and then I'm going to knock this one off. Yeah, listen. Touching dampens the moistened touch. Dip your finger, dip your finger. One of my poems about touchers. Hi, Jim Shampoo.
What?
I said hi to Jim Champo. So, and I think the key thing here to note is, like, here's a good example of something that could be interpreted as an SI experiential thing or a touch data thing. One thing I've noted before with Kimberly, when it's not when it's not directed at her at all. So let's say she doesn't like somebody. She's got a feeling for him, She doesn't like it. And I'm tolerating some sort of bad behavior for a while. This person's making her madder and madder because basically she doesn't like the energy or something. Well, then what's going to happen is eventually I'm going to start being like, okay, the guy will give me enough rope to hang him with or enough ammunition. No. Do not close that.
Oh, what's not completely closed?
Okay, leave it. Just don't touch it anymore, okay? Okay. So, what was I saying? I've lost my train of thought. Yeah, but see, I don't like that kinesthetic thinking because that's not what I'm talking about. Look, there's a body awareness in space in real time that's SE. That's not a kind of memory. Kinesthetic learning suggests that you learn by experiencing, and that's fine. That's more like an SI thing, maybe. But this is where I'm getting with that, with the SI. Kinesthetic is, I think, too broad of a term for that. But regardless, so it's like Kimberly needs to experience something to understand it. When I'm schooling somebody like that she thinks deserves to be schooled, she unconsciously and unaware she's doing it, mirrors this and moves her mouth along with me. And she's not doing that in order to, she's not saying the words. She's not, she obviously can't manufacture the same exact words with me in real time, mouthing the words with me. You know, so she's just mouthing, like talking or whatever. But she's like imitating my gestures and my facial expressions a little bit. So to me, that's touch data. She's saying, I need to experience this. I'm going to remember
I'm not even aware of that I'm doing it.
and I'm going to remember the impression of this. And so when she remembers back to this event, sometime that happened later, and she remembers it back later, she remembers, oh, that's right. It was that energy. It was that touch data, which it lacks sufficient words to describe what comprises it, you know? And it also explains why when I insist that she not pay attention to the energy level at all, which is partially included in tone, but tone energy level is not the same thing as tone.
Eric, can you pass me the meth lighter?
There you go, mister. So basically what I'm saying is I'm conceiving of a world that's potentially like this, where probably most ISFJs are look touch in their first two things. There are probably just as many look ISFJs as there are touch ISFJs. But probably most ISFJs have one of those two in the first slot. Probably the same thing is true of most ISTJs.
No, it's just
but I suspect that, you know, touch data does link to FI and or SI, but if you're an FE user, FE is an interface function, whereas FI really has quote unquote data. SI has data, FI has data, TI has data, NI, I guess, has data. But the interface functions don't have data, they have modalities of interfacing with logics, and the action functions don't have data, they have impacts that they make. And the knowledge functions don't. They have data, yeah. Okay, so anyway, I think that it comes from her fifth slot SE. It's active, but she is in a sense unaware of it. I mean, that's the thing about ignoring, right? Is the person is able to, it seems so obvious to them that it's not worth paying attention to. NI stuff comes very easy to me, but I don't use it to good effect in my own life. SE stuff comes very easy to her, and she does use it to good effect in her own life, in the sense that she's following through on things she has planned. When she wakes up in the morning, she's like, okay, what do I got to do today? And she follows through and tries to do it. But it's ignoring in the sense that she's not viewing it as a well understood modality by which she can attain ontological impact in the world, right? So it's got no instrumentality, I guess you could say. It's an absolute value that nevertheless functions instrumentally. Okay, so that's a complicated way of saying stuff. I don't know. Databases versus extroverted function, script and query. Yeah. I would say it's like more like script process query. So your TIFI would be process. Or what's script? Script is like to write, put information and get information. You got put and get there. Your TI and FI are going to be process. That's going to be, I guess, get, right? And then your TE and FE are going to be, are not going to be put together going to be some sort of handshake protocol, and then your NI and your SI are going to be received information. Well, I cut this live stream short. I just wanted to cover the toucher thing. Or you guys want to live stream too?
You want? Why don't we like flip the camera and get some inclusivity here for the people of color?
Do you have other stuff to do, Eric?
No, but basically I wanted to stop this and talk to you guys. And if we want to start to make a video, so it's fine. We can start another live stream, but I got home and you guys weren't here, so I kind of waiting for you guys to go back, talk about this, or just sort of talk about the day or whatever. So
Hey, internet people, Eric has friends. Did you know that?
I do. I got friends.
Mm-hmm.
They're sitting right here.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I admit it. I put up those voice tape recorders back there. I pushed play and I scripted them. Those are that's my laughter. I pitch shifted it up.
You could move the camera so everybody can see that you actually do
let's
have friends.
say hi or bye or whatever.
Mhm.
Introduce us.
On
Introduce us.
coming in the left corner,
We've got
weighing in at 7'2", 432 pounds.
Oh my God, he's got the original shirt.
The Southpaw.
That's right.
The Southpaw from Hoboken, New Jersey.
No, New York.
New York, New York.
Okay, well, but the boxing version of Spacey's from Hoboken. Okay.
We've got a 27-year-old handsome man wearing a handsome shirt,
It's Spacey.
and he's single.
The Hammer. Spaceman. There you go.
Woo! Yeah.
Then
In the
we've
middle
got
corner.
the introverted thinker.
Weighing at 6'1", 83 pounds.
Mm-hmm.
The skin and bones throne to throner. The challenger.
T.I.
The challenger of what?
The T.I. Hammer. What? I don't know. It doesn't
I'm
matter.
telling
This
you
isn't.
something,
You don't understand the way that term is used in this sport. It's a very particular
You look
sport.
very cute. The camera,
Okay.
Susie.
It is the one and only Susie, the bruising bruiser introverted thinker. In the right corner here, next to Susie, the man who brings terror a new name. The terror machine himself. Constantly terrorizing, never hair accessorizing. It's Abe, the Braham Hammond Braider! And in the other corner, there she is. The cheerful one herself, the nicest coordinator, the archpastor's wife herself, Kimberly, the bim boom 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 bamber
Ray of
Lee.
fucking sunshine.
I've been your ring announcer Eric, and I'll let you know who won the fight later. I got my money on Susie, the bruising bruiser, whatever her name is.
83 pounds.
83 pounds of nothing but pure muscle.
That's what I do. I bruise everyone.
Mhm. If you want to get bruised, try to step up.
Are you ready to have your feelings hurt?
Are you ready?
Are you ready for 22 inches of destruction?